Hey everyone, welcome to the live page. I am super excited for this stream today. Everyone who's out there, just let me know that you're able to hear me. Give me a heart or a like, so that I know that you're able to hear me okay. This particular Facebook Live is one that I think is really relevant for the times right now. And this one is dedicated to Melly. It's her birthday today, so happy birthday, Melly. So what we're going to be talking about today is about using the natural rhythms that are a part of the universe that we're in, that are part of the world and the planet that we're in, and the daily cycles that we're in to optimize your life, your health, your energy, your metabolism, your digestion. Every single part of your life can really be optimized when you're using routine as a tool for your life. Now, I love this idea, and I'll tell you the backstory about why I love it so much. Many, many years ago, I visited Maharishi University. Maharishi University is a lovely little gem right in the middle of Iowa, who does tons of work and research, teaching and studying Ayurveda, among other things. They're most famous for transcendental meditation, which has been around forever, and there's thousands or probably millions of people around the world who practice that. But my piece with this daily rhythms came from their Ayurveda component. And so I was speaking to someone after a class that I had sat in on the weekend that I was visiting, or the week that I was visiting. And we were talking about my Ayurvedic constitution. I won't get into this, but it's a very fun and extensive topic if you ever want to dive into something. And in this particular conversation, one of the things, he was just giving me a few ideas of things that I could use to balance out my constitution. And one of those things was routine. Now that blew my mind at the time because I had never considered routine as something you would do on purpose. I had at that point in my life, in my 20s, sort of, I think at that point was towards the end of my 20s, and I'd spent that whole part of my life really developing the idea that routine is something we need to get out of. We get stuck in a routine and it sucks the life out of us, and we need to do everything that we can to not have routine, suck us down into its black hole. Hi, Christopher. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for letting me know you're here. So routine as a prescription for health, that had never occurred to me before. And what an amazing idea it was. So to realize there is a time and a place for routine, and it can actually be health promoting. It can actually be extraordinarily grounding. And if you're anyone who knows me very well, you know I am naturally a very ungrounded person. I think someone once described it the best when they said, I don't know what it is about you. You have this just totally scattered energy, yet somehow you just keep on accomplishing things. And that's me to a T. So this concept, this idea of bringing in routine as a health promoting practice is an extremely relevant one, and one that I love to share with other people who may have never considered this either. Now, why would we want to do this? And how? How would you even decide or establish routine? So there's many different ways and theories out there, and they are all valid, and I encourage everyone to explore different ideas and concepts around this. Finding your own routine and habit creation is one of the best things that you can do. This is something that we're doing all of the time anyway. It's just simply choosing the habits that serve us. Now, there's lots of books and ideas and podcasts out there about this idea of habit. So I'm not going to go too far into it in and of itself, but I do love to talk about neurology. And so here's something that I will share, that our brain is always looking to be as efficient as possible. So if we can take the path of least resistance. So though creating a new routine or a new habit does take an initial force of extra energy at the beginning, once we've done that and created that, it actually, our brain sort of puts that into a little package that's a pattern that it's then able to continue to do routinely, that then supports us so that we're able to expand and put our focus on other things. Now, how do you pick when these different patterns happen and what they are? Well, luckily we have tons of wisdom from throughout the ages that points us in the right direction. And one of the best places to look, because we are actually part of nature, is nature itself. We oftentimes are very separated from nature in our modern lives. We have lights and electricity. We have houses that we're in that shield us very much from nature. And unfortunately, especially these days, a lot of us don't even go outside at all, or very much at all. Even if we do, we're driving in our cars. So we tend to get very sort of disconnected from nature's wisdom. So it's very nice when we can take a look at the wisdom that other people have drawn from that, from studying, observing, and looking at human function as it relates to that over the millennia. So a lot of the resourcefulness that I'm going to be drawing from in this particular video is drawing from the wisdom of Ayurveda. I love Ayurveda. It is the ancient healing medicine and lifestyle medicine of India. So this is about how to live your life. And one of the things I love about it that really resonated with me about it is that it's not just about how to take care of your physical vessel, but it's also recognizing that everything you do affects everything. So the routine in my day might affect my digestion. The food that I eat may affect my mind. And I think we kind of have a little bit of a sense of this, but really solidifying and recognizing there are very specific strategies that we could use to move in the right direction are really going to help. So who's this for? This is certainly for everyone, but there's some people in particular who it might really help. If you're someone, like I just described myself, who tends to be a little bit scattered, like a leaf in the wind, especially these days, one of the things that I find is that, staying at home more often, you start to lose the natural structure of the day. For people who are not working at all, that certainly comes to be an issue. So people who just don't have any way of structuring their day because they just don't have anything to do, it's a blessing and a curse, as many of those people would say. There's no time that you have to be up by, no time you have to get to bed by. When do you eat breakfast? When do you do any of those things? And what do you even do if you don't have anything prompting you to do those? So we're going to discuss some of those things that help create some of that structure in your day. Another person or people that this is really good for is people who struggle with sleep. So sleep obviously is a very significant part of our natural cycles and rhythms, and recognizing some of these practices as they fit into those cycles can be very supportive of sleep. And I'll say a few things specifically about that sleep as well, and just a few little tips and tricks for that specifically, both related to Ayurveda and separate from it. So talking about Ayurveda as it relates to daily routine. So the word for this in Ayurveda is dinacharya. So that simply basically means daily routine. So what this is looking at is Ayurveda really looks at all the cycles. So it looks at the cycles of the seasons. It looks at the cycles of the day. It looks at the cycles of our body. And so really using those different cycles and the energy associated with them and the elements associated with them to help create more balance in our body and our life. And as I mentioned earlier, that can be very far-reaching. So as I said, there's Ritucharya, which is looking at the seasons, and then there's Dinacharya, which is looking at your actual daily routine on a day-to-day basis. So there are different parts of the day that are conducive to certain things, and being aware of this fact in and of itself is a great place to start. And being aware of how these different times influence your body and your mind can support you being healthiest, happiest, most productive, and most energized throughout the day and every day. As well as I will add in the piece about purpose too, and we'll touch on that. So here's the first piece. Sleep and wake matters. When you go to sleep and when you wake up matters. So I've been telling people during this time, sleep in, but not too much. And the reason I say sleep in is because so many of us are just underslept chronically. It's probably one of the biggest chronic conditions of our time is just lack of sleep. And in the US, we're up there with how little sleep we get. So allowing yourself to make up just a little bit sleep if you've been deprived in that, but recognizing that sleeping in too much is actually very harmful. So one of the best things that you can do is go to bed as early as possible. Now, this is one area that I always struggle, and so it's always a little bit of a discipline for me to get to bed early. We'll talk about those bedtime routines, but here's a piece of information to know and realize that the 2 hours, or I should say the hours before midnight are going to be your best quality sleep. The hours before midnight are going to be your best quality sleep. So that means if you go to bed at midnight, you just missed out on your best quality sleep of the night. So does that mean you have to go to bed at 8 o'clock? No, but it means get in as much sleep as you can before you go to bed. I love that piece of information because that helps me feel even more motivated to go to bed earlier. Don't sleep in. So I know it's tempting. I know it feels good. And I love doing it every once in a while. Although for me now, sleeping in is maybe 9 o'clock. And then I start to really feel like I'm sleeping in too late. But really, before sunrise is actually ideal. That's a whole lot easier in the summertime as the sunrise gets later and later. Ayurveda actually recommends an hour and a half before sunrise. And that's a great practice to bring in or to aim for if you really want to go for it. So early to bed, early to rise has been something subscribed to by people throughout time, through all different traditions, through all different spiritual practices, and really all different, people of many, many different types of success. So there's a lot to be said for waking up very early. But I would say at the very minimum, just wake up early for you. And as I'm talking about this, I'll mention, please just pick out the pieces of this that resonate most with you. Don't be hard on yourself. Don't be too over ambitious with all of this so that you're just giving yourself a hard time about not being perfect with this. These are all tips. Pick a couple of them to implement that you think that can really help you, or create a schedule and decide that you're going to use this to live by for a while. It's up to you. So don't sleep in too late. Try to be up by 8:30, 7:30, 6:30. The sun is rising, I think, around, what is it now, 6:30? And so, the earlier the better, as far as all that goes. Here's the other thing, as we're talking about sleep, nap discerningly. Nap discerningly. So some people love naps. And naps can be a really great thing, especially when we're really sleep deprived. But they can also be something that's just not conducive to you being in cycle, to your physiology operating at its best, and a number of other things. So I'll give a couple of little tips about taking naps. One, don't nap too long. Two, here's a really interesting one, and you may love this or not love this. I never loved this until I did it, and then I completely fell in love with it. Nap sitting upright as much as you can. So if you're on a couch and you can just kind of lie up against the side of the couch and prop a pillow underneath you, that's the best way to nap. Give it a try. You will be amazed at how much more awake you feel after the nap. I don't know about you, but I'm someone that whenever I decide I'm going to take a nap because I was tired, I wake up 100 times more groggy and tired than I was before I took a nap, and I'm spent. So actually taking a nap, partially seated upright. Of course, you could be in a lazy boy partially upright or something along those lines too, if that works for you. But this does wonders. Also, if you have a sleep mask, and I'll mention this a little bit more in the sleep component of it. If you have a sleep mask, you can wear that while you're napping just to block out the sunlight. I have one that I absolutely love. They got on Amazon. I'll share that with you. I'll actually post it in the Optimizing Wellness Facebook group. So if you're not already in there, get on there. There's tons of great information being shared on that by all the people in the group. I'm absolutely loving that community. So Optimizing Wellness Duluth, get right over there. So we'll talk a little bit more about sleep coming up. But here's another thing. So we talked about sleep, when you go to sleep and when you wake up matters. When you eat during the day matters. So Ayurveda has a concept of the word that they use is Agni. So they're referring to your digestive fire. So this actually is a really great concept just to pay attention to in the sense of when you're eating so that you're not sort of stamping out that digestive fire. That digestive fire is believed to be an extraordinary source of your health. Keeping that fire burning strong is something that can help you not just digest your food, but be strong and vital, burn off any toxins, keep you healthy and well, keep your immunity high, and really overall have you be your most vital and long living. So this concept of Agni is a very extensively discussed concept in Ayurveda, and you can look at that, or we can talk about that more in other videos. But for this concept, eating according to the certain times of the day is something that is very helpful to look at when we're looking at this idea of supporting your health and immunity through keeping this digestive fire alive. And this is especially important, obviously, for people who have sort of a weak digestion or a very variable digestion. So time of day matters for having a strong Agni and for overall digestion of your food. So again, remember, we're looking at nature and we're taking cues from nature. And this is not just in theory, but this really is sort of how it ends up working too. But it's very cool to apply it in theory. And that's this. When is the sun the highest in the sky? During the noon hour, right? And so when is your fire going to be the strongest? Well, as above, so below, right? And so our digestive fire is going to be stronger when the big ball in the sky of fire is at its strongest. And so that's going to be during that noon hour. So it's actually recommended by Ayurveda that be the largest meal of the day. Now, side note, disclaimer, as far as the largest meal of the day, Ayurveda does not generally recommend eating very large meals. So it's not to say that much, like just to absolutely stuff yourself at lunchtime. Really, actually, what Ayurveda recommends is that you eat about as much food as you can fit in the palms of your hands. Because that's about how big your stomach is. And so keeping your food light, because remember, the goal is not to stomp out that digestion. So keeping that digestive strong. So eating the biggest meal of the day, it still can be a fairly light meal, but recognizing that's when your fire is the strongest, so that's when to do it. Also, don't do it too much later past that, because that's when your digestive fire really starts to go downhill. So about noon to 1 is ideal. After 2, it's really recommended that you really try to eat lunch before 2 o'clock. And after that, generally I just try to eat something really light. You don't want to give yourself get hangry from, being too hungry, but, just at least eating something small, light, something that's not going to burden your digestion too much until you get to an early dinner is sort of the recommendation. Now that can be a little bit tricky given that, if you wait that late, sometimes you're going to be really hungry. But one of the best ways to support that practice is actually to make sure that you eat early. Okay, so you eat breakfast early. So since you arose early, eating breakfast fairly early will be fairly easy. So say around 8:30. And then, eating lunch, and then therefore dinner will be fairly easy as well too. So there's actually an ant crawling across and around my computer. This is really sweet as we're talking about nature here. So eating according to the day, eating lunch according to the time of day when your digestion is very strongest, allowing that to be, a decent sized meal in comparison with the other meals. And maybe if there is anything that you would eat that's a little on the heavier side, tending towards that at lunch. And then as far as breakfast goes, before you eat breakfast, ideally you would exercise. So the best time of day to exercise is before breakfast. That's going to really get your energy going for the day. And I love actually the idea of, even if it's not the only exercise you do, doing just a little bit of something to get your energy going and moving. So whether it's going for a short walk, going for, if you have an exercise bike at home and jumping on that for 15 minutes, doing a few sun salutations if you're someone who has a yoga practice, something along those lines can be a really great way to start your day, even if it's not all the way, even if it's just doing 10 sit-ups or something like that, just to get your energy moving, or a few jumping jacks. Dinner. This is another one to really pay attention to as far as the rhythms go. Really huge. And I think so many people, if they just did this practice, it would make a huge difference in so many things for them. Dinner before 7 to 8 p.m., ideally before sunset. That's, again, depending on where you are and what time of year it is, that can be trickier. But ideally not after 7 p.m., absolutely not after 8 p.m. And keeping it fairly light, especially if it's on the later side. And this will make a huge difference in how well you sleep, sometimes how early you're able to fall asleep, how you feel in the morning. Huge. If you tend to be a late eater, a late snacker, give this a try. You might be shocked over time. If you, or just watch or pay attention, if you tend not to eat late, but then you do one time, notice the next morning how differently you feel when you've eaten late. So just remembering that after dinner time is your wind down time. So really thinking wind down after dinner. So again, following the natural cycles and the rhythms of the day. One thing before I move on from the meals, and we may touch back on them, but one thing that's recommended that I love, especially after dinner, it's definitely not recommended to exercise after eating. In fact, it's recommended to eat at least a couple of hours, ideally, before exercising, especially if it's a heavy meal. If it's a real heavy meal, actually like 4 hours is recommended, but at least a couple. So, ideally when you're exercising, it's good to have a little bit of fuel in your body. You don't want to be starving, but you also don't want to have a full stomach. And this is not just Ayurveda that's saying this. This actually makes sense from a scientific standpoint. When all of your blood is going to your digestive organs to help digest your food, it's actually going to just be harder to work out, as well as it's going to really tax your heart and things like that as well. So definitely recommended that you wait as long as possible after you eat to exercise. If you are someone who doesn't exercise in the morning, the next best time that you can exercise is right before dinner. Right before dinner, okay? So if you have to have an afternoon snack, that's fine. That's a perfectly fine thing to do. If you're going to exercise, keep it light, have it be a piece of fruit or something along those lines. And then exercise right before dinner. So then you're done exercising, you eat dinner, and then the rest of the evening is the time to wind down at the end of the day. So really focusing that on being soothing activities, self-care activities, things are bringing your energy down. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go climb into bed at 7:30 at night, but really just having the energy of moving in that direction and telling your brain we're moving in that direction now in every way possible. So as much as possible, leaving behind the things that stress you out at the end of the day, making a to-do list for the things that you're going to make sure that you get to first thing the next day. When you wake up early, that will actually be much easier, and you can start to tackle that to-do list after you've had a good start to your day. Here's a challenge for you. As you're doing this wind down process, you could try doing no screens before bed. Now, I know this is fairly common information at this point, just in the last couple of years, especially since iPhone has started putting in the sunset and sunrise and that type of thing. If you don't have that in your phone, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. The melatonin in our brain is stimulated by in our sleep-wake cycles that happen, from our pineal gland, are actually triggered by the frequency of the light that they're seeing. So during the day, there's more blue light in the atmosphere. That's why when you look at the sky, it looks blue. In the evening, there's more red light in the atmosphere. That's why when you look at a sunset, it's red, right, or orange. And so in the same way, those are the same cues that our body follows during those times. All right, so the same way that the atmosphere is, the same cues that our body follows. So when we're exposing our brain to blue light, our brain is thinking it's daytime, it's time to be awake, and it's not going to produce the hormones that help us sleep. All right, so that's during the daytime. During the evening time or nighttime, when it's getting more of those orange hues, or more specifically less of the blue hues, that's the time when it's going to actually recognize it's time to be going to sleep. So as much as you can, actually surrounding yourself with things that don't have a blue hue. So you can set your computer to decrease the blue hue. You can set your phone to do the same, most phones and most computers these days. If you don't, there are actually red screens that you can buy, or some people actually buy orange glasses, which, just filter everything through that. Something to realize, a lot of LEDs actually have quite a bit of blue in them, or fluorescent lights. A lot of us have those fluorescent bulbs in our lights these days, and a lot of those have a lot of blue light. So really paying attention to that. Sometimes when you're in the store, you can buy different spectrum bulbs, and that might be something that you pay attention to. As an alternative, one thing that I have actually done is just taken a red scarf and sort of wrapped that around a light in the room that I tend to be at in the evening, and that creates that red light through that bulb. And so that actually makes it so that I'm seeing more of that red. So that's a strategy that I've used, not a scientifically proven one, but one that you can keep in mind if you don't happen to have, the proper light bulbs or whatever the case may be. You can adapt to that. So these are just small tips that actually can make a really big difference. So actually getting away from screens at the end of the day does two things. One is that red light, orange light, blue light kind of brain stimulation that it's helping with. The other one is obviously just all of the mental activity. And this is a really big one for people that tend to have a hard time falling asleep. There's a lot of mental activity that can have a big impact on that. So when you're looking at your screen, there's a million different things that you can go to. You can think about, you get one text message and it sends you to all of these different things that you need to do. You get an email and that reminds you of all of these different things that you need to do. Anybody else ever pick up their phone to do one thing and completely forget about it until half an hour later because you had 10 other distractions that happened? That's your mind going at a million miles an hour. And so just giving your mind an opportunity to check out and be present with what is, to find its own natural rhythm instead of one that's contained in a tiny little screen, is a really powerful thing for helping you do that in the evening. So reading a book, meditating, doing a breathing practice, These are all things that are perfect things to be doing in the evening after dinner. However, I think I started to say this, but I'm not sure if I got back to it. You don't necessarily want to be exercising after meals. However, if you do go for a digestive walk after meals, that is something that is a really good thing to do. So go for a gentle stroll. You can do this after breakfast. You can do this after lunch. You can do this after dinner. In fact, it's actually recommended that you take 100 steps after every meal. And not necessarily jump up from your meal and go. You might just sit and let it digest for a few minutes and then go for a walk. But you might actually find that you kind of feel your digestion going just from that moving process that happens as you're walking. Just that rocking and moving, that's actually sort of stimulating your digestive tract. So that's a very healthful thing to do. That's a great thing to do in the evening. So again, just thinking about the energy that you're doing with a stroll is different than a power walk. So in the evening, going for a gentle stroll, appreciating the smell of the air, the neighborhood around you, that's different energy than going for a run for exercise. So being aware of the quality of that. So after dinner, really thinking about winding down and all the different ways that we talked about. So again, meditation, breathing. We've been doing the calls for somatorespiratory integration every week on Thursday. We'll be doing that this week at 7:30 again. It's a really great time to do that somatorespiratory integration or body breath integration practice that we do. If you don't know about that, feel free to ask more about that or join the call on Thursday. You can register through that right through the Facebook event on our page. And reflect on your day. This is a great time for a gratitude practice. This is a great time to take an inventory of your day. Great time to take an inventory of your day, to take a look back and say, what went really well today? What worked for me today? What would I improve upon? Having seen how today went, what am I grateful for? There is never too much gratitude to go around, and there is never a shortage of things to be grateful for, just our ability to perceive them. So actually having a practice is one of the best ways of cultivating that ability to see things that we're grateful for in the world. Some of the poorest people in the world have lived the most grateful lives possible. And so recognizing that that's something that we can cultivate for our lives. And one of the biggest things that will make a huge difference in your life. I tell people over and over and over again, very adamant that this practice alone, having a gratitude practice, will change your life. So listing 3 to 10 things every single day that you're grateful for, it'll change your life. It's such a small thing that will really make a difference for you. Another great thing to do at the end of the day is plan your next day. Now, I'm not saying whip out the planner and start, getting into your whole next day, but get your lunch ready. Get your clothes ready that you're going to wear the next day. Just those routine things so that when you wake up the next morning, you don't have to be scattered and running around and trying to make all those things happen in the morning. You can have a restful morning where you can be putting your time, energy, and attention into putting intention into your day, into putting purpose into your life. And that's one of the best ways that you can start out. Okay. And so that's the next thing that we're going to talk about is morning routine. So one of the biggest things that you can do is take time for yourself and your bigger self. So you spend the rest of the day really paying attention to the rest of the world, but really paying attention to the bigger self. So, whatever your higher power is or however you relate to that, it's an extraordinary time to connect with that. Extraordinary time to cultivate your consciousness, an extraordinary time to put intention into who you want to be and how you want to be in your day and in the world. So taking even 3 to 5 minutes for this in the morning is another thing. It will change your day. If you do a gratitude practice in the morning and the evening, that'll change your life even more. So thinking about If you want a resource for this, Hal Elrod's book, Miracle Morning, is an extraordinary resource. He talks about actually developing a daily routine where you are incorporating silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and journaling all into a morning practice that can be done in, as little as 5 or 6 minutes even. And those days, which hopefully are more days than not, once you have that practice, you will just have your mind blown. So definitely check out that book by Hal Elrod. That's a great, great resource around this. So this is something that you need to figure out for yourself, what's important to you. And what are the things that you could go your entire day and never do, but you value deeply, that you know would nourish you completely, just to have a little bit of time doing it. Maybe it's that same breath or meditation practice that we talked about doing at night. Maybe it's prayer. Maybe it's journaling. Any of those things or all of those things are a really, really great thing to do in the morning. We talked about having breakfast early, ideally. If you're someone that having breakfast is good for. Ideally, exercise before breakfast if possible, or before dinner if that doesn't work for you. And you want to shower daily. Shower daily. This is another thing that I think a lot of people skip over. I don't smell if I don't shower every day, so I don't shower every day. Actually just having even if it's rinsing off, if you get dry skin from showering regularly, is an incredibly cleansing process for the soul, as much as for the body. And so actually waking up and adding this to your morning routine is especially supportive. I will also say something else. If you do have dry skin, that will also support that. But before I say that, an important piece on this is you do want to shower before you eat, kind of for the same reason that you would exercise before you eat. This is actually using a lot of your digestive resources when you take a shower. So if you eat and then take a shower, the two are competing for resources. So you really don't want to shower after you eat. You want to shower before. So one of the most amazing practices that you can do for self-care, for relaxation, for restoration, you can do this in the morning, and you can also do this before you go to bed, is this really secret gem prescribed by Ayurveda, which is called, in Ayurvedic terms, in Sanskrit, it's called Abhyanga, which is really just a full body oil massage. Now, you don't have to do full body. You can just do, head and feet, or just your shoulders, or, pick up a couple of body parts that, are body parts that you maybe have extra sore that day, or whatever the case may be. But this is very nourishing, and I'll explain how to do it. As far as that goes. Now, this is something that you can do actually before you take a shower. You would want to do this before you take a shower. Honestly, some days, a lot of days, I'll actually cheat and do it in the shower because it's a time saver. No one has ever told me that. That's just something that I developed on my own. You just want to be really careful that you don't get it on the floor of the shower because it gets really slippery. Okay, so the best way of doing this is actually to take a glass container with some oil in it. In the springtime, it's really good to have it be a heating oil, like sesame is one of the best ones, and that's oftentimes prescribed year-round. You can do sesame, but almost any oil will work. Some are kind of better than others. Almond oil is a good one. Coconut oil is really cheap, so a lot of people use that. It's quite cooling. But, a lot of people do like to use that. You just have to have a way of softening it because it does tend to harden up. So if you have a glass container that you have the oil in, you can run a sink with some warm or hot water and just set that in there for a while with the top on, of course, just to allow that to warm up and heat up. And then when you do that self-oil massage, it's so nice. It's incredibly nice. So this is good for your joints. This is good for moisturizing your skin. So it keeps it from drying out in the shower. It's incredibly relaxing and soothing. And it's, you know, actually prescribed by Ayurveda to do on a daily basis. So definitely consider adding that into your routine, maybe even just 1 day a week, so that you can, you know, have that as something that you give yourself some extra self-care with. Maybe you even love it so much that you do it several times a week or every day. So you can do that before the shower, and then once you're in the shower, you can just wash it off. You can use soap or something lighter so that it doesn't dry out your skin as much. It will, you know, leave oil on your skin if you don't wash it off. But for some people that have really dry skin, that's a really good thing. It's just suggested to do circles around joints and long swoops along the long bones. So circles, long, circle, long. And actually doing it away from your body helps, is very good for lymphatic drainage as well. So that's helping support that. So going sort of from the midline outwards and from the top down. So that's the morning routine. It can be a really beautiful thing. And again, these are just little pieces and tidbits as far as how to add nourishment into your day, how to live within the natural cycles of nature. Again, we are a part of nature, so the more that you're in line with that, the healthier you're going to be. Final thing, just a couple of other tips about sleep. If you're someone who sleep is very challenging for, I want to add in this piece about sleep. So, sleep and mental activity. Sleep and mental activity. Obviously, wakefulness, you know, wouldn't be a conversation without talking about stress or anxiety. I have other videos that I go into much more extensively about that. If you think that that's contributing to your sleep, you can refer to those videos. This is not something that you just do at night. This is something that you look at throughout the course of your day. What I'm going to talk about specifically, though, is a neurobiological function that can contribute to wakefulness as it relates to mental activity. So there's a very cool process that happens in our body. This is very cool to know about. Process that happens in our body. It's called the hypothalamic pituitary axis. And what that's referring to is the way that our brain and our body interfaces. So here's how that goes. Your brain has thoughts. Your mind creates thoughts. Those go through this hypothalamic pituitary axis where the thoughts become essentially hormones of whatever kind that your brain interprets to then dispense to the body. The body then picks up those chemical signals that are alerting the body what's going on. So if those are stressful thoughts, the brain is going to send out those chemical signals of stress to your body, and your body is going to respond accordingly. Your heart rate's going to go up. Your blood pressure is going to go up. All of these different things that we would expect if you were stressed. But here's the trick, and this is where we end up getting kind of caught in a feedback loop. Your body, once it starts creating this stress response, then is in a feedback loop with your brain. So your brain actually picks up on those signals via your nervous system, and what does it do? This is the trick. It says there's stress going on. And so it creates thoughts that match the signal your body is sending it. So if your body is tense, if your body has tension patterns or defense patterns going on, either momentarily or sort of patterns that have been locked in over time, you're going to continue to get the same thoughts, stressful thoughts, that are going to keep on feeding back and then feeding back into the body. And it's a loop that just happens over and over and over again. So really recognizing that, and there's of course two ways of doing that. One is intervening at the level of the thought, which can be very challenging, but of course things like meditation or a mindfulness practice or journaling or gratitude practice or affirmations or any of those things that bring more intention into our mindfulness can really help. Or you can intervene at the level of the body. So these would be things like relaxation techniques, progressive relaxation techniques, breath practices. Chiropractic is probably, in my opinion, one of the most powerful things that you can do. The type of care that we do in our office specifically is looking at tension patterns in your body, spinal cord tension patterns, the ones that you can't just relax your shoulder and it goes away, or get a massage that it goes away. It's locked in neurologically. So really getting at those deep rooted patterns is really the work that we do. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that you can do for unlocking those things that otherwise would ultimately stay in your body and therefore in your life indefinitely. So chiropractic care, of course, and things like yoga, things like somatorespiratory integration, which we already talked about, that practice, which we have the call that we have been doing on an ongoing basis on Thursday evenings. So again, if that's something that you feel would support you, choose one or two practices, and you may do both. You may hit that feedback cycle on both ends. So you're both affecting your thoughts and your mind, and also affecting your brain, your body, your body's relationship to that feedback loop as well, and creating relaxation in your body. So those are some of the most powerful things you can do from a mind-body perspective. A few other things that are kind of no-brainers. For some people, they may be really obvious, but they're worth mentioning because it's one of those things that people may say that they have insomnia and then not even realize. So if you're someone who struggles with falling asleep or waking up in the middle of the night, if you're someone that wakes up in the middle of the night, this may be true for you too. Before you do anything else, if you're drinking caffeine after noon, maybe at all even, but certainly afternoon, definitely after 2 and even afternoon, I would cut that out first. Okay, so no caffeine after lunch, basically, would be my first suggestion. Here's some nuances to that. What has caffeine? And I should say caffeine or stimulants. Okay, so what has caffeine and what is a stimulant? So obviously we all know and we all think of coffee as having caffeine. So coffee has caffeine. Tea has caffeine. Black tea has the most amount of caffeine. Green tea has less, and white tea has the least. But they still do have significant amounts of caffeine. If I were to drink green tea at 5 p.m., I would be awake fairly late. Some people's systems are just more sensitive to it than others. Here's one that might surprise you. Chocolate. Chocolate has caffeine and theobromine, which is also a stimulant. Chocolate has caffeine. So if you like to have that chocolate bar after dinner, or even for some people, if you're very sensitive, that, chocolate ice cream or something along those lines, this might be a source for you as well of wakefulness. Finally, sugar. Sugar is a stimulant. Not sugar has caffeine, but sugar itself is a stimulant. So you might notice that if you have a late sweet treat in the evening before you go to bed, if it doesn't keep you up, it may seriously affect your sleep. So no sugar. And I recommend, if you have a sweet tooth and you're eating a lot of sweets, to really look at that and decrease that as much as possible as it is. But keeping your sugar at night to very, very minimum. And when you do, keep it very early, very close to dinner time, so that that's not affecting your sleep cycle. Okay, so decreasing your sugar, decreasing your caffeine, and any other stimulants. All right. Alcohol is another big one. Alcohol can have a very, very big effect on your sleep cycle, as well as exercise. Exercise is something that you might feel like, well, it wears me out, and then I fall asleep. But it actually does kind of ramp you up at the same time. So you might just play around with it. You might find that actually your sleep is not as good. There's actually a sleep app that I really love. I'll put it in the Optimizing Wellness Facebook group. That is a really good one. I'm just going to write that down so I remember to put that in there. So the sleep app actually tracks your sleep cycle. So it just listens to your movement, and it can actually track how lightly or how hard you're sleeping, how many hours. Look at your patterns. You can enter in notes to say, I drank coffee today, or I exercised late today, or I drank today. You could add all of those different notes in so you can track and see how those are actually affecting your sleep cycle. It's a really cool thing. And so if you're curious about sleep, definitely check that out. This is a tip that I would give to everyone, regardless of if you have trouble sleeping or not. Light pollution is huge, huge, huge for us these days. Really blocking out the light as much as possible. One of two ways: through a face mask, which I already said I'll share the face mask that I love to use. Super inexpensive, so you can buy 3 of them and just have them around in case you lose one behind the bed or whatever. And I put one in my travel bag and one in the bedroom, and so I always have one when I need it. So turning off any little lights in the room. So the little flashing light on your, electronics, or, the light coming in from the street light, your alarm clock. If you've got a bright white light on your alarm clock all night long, that's sending signals to your brain. Flashing lights are actually one of the worst for your sleeping cycle. That's kind of a signal to your brain that there's something moving nearby and that you should wake up. So you're not going to get good sleep. This is especially relevant for you if you watch TV or fall asleep watching TV. It's going to have a major negative effect on your sleep and your deep sleep especially. So just a few things about just kind of helping you have the healthiest sleep possible. Here's one other interesting thing. Different times of the day and different times of the night are actually associated with different organs. You can look this up according to traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda. But the one that shows up quite a bit is sometimes people will wake up right around 2:30 in the morning, wide awake. If this is you, you may want to look at the liver. This is the time that your liver tends to really kick into gear and start processing things. And so, especially if you're eating sweets and or drinking alcohol, you may notice that you tend to pop awake during this time. And when you do, that's going to obviously affect your sleep as well. So something to look at. If that's happening a lot, you may want to look at doing a liver detox. So that nutritional dietary thing isn't something that I focus my energy on as much. So certainly find a nutritional specialist to help recommend those kind of things and what would work and be healthy and safe for you as far as a liver detox would go. But definitely look to the liver if you find that you're waking up a lot during this time, either what you're putting in that it's having to process, or it just might be a little bit sludgy and it could use a little cleanse. So I hope all of that information is valuable for you in your life, in your day. That was a lot, and I really loved sharing all of that. This is an accumulation of a lot of knowledge that I have, and it's kind of one of those things that I don't necessarily realize that I even have all this knowledge until I sit down and share it with all of you. And there's so much more, so please join me in future Facebook sessions. Come on those calls. Come on the Q&A calls that we're doing on Tuesday. Ask questions. We've been doing sort of topic-specific ones Let us know which topics you would most love to hear, what sort of challenges are most up for you right now so that we can offer support in those. And definitely share with friends these videos if you feel that they would be supportive for them. I'm so grateful to be able to continue to offer these virtually for all of you during this time. Take the time right now when you are slowing down, taking a pause to really reassess and make choices that are positive for you, to spend time surrounding yourself with things that are uplifting your energy, with people, information, and resources that are uplifting your energy, bringing more health, more wealth in all ways, and more connection in your life and in your community. So thank you so much for spending your time with me. Come back anytime and share this with someone who you know would appreciate it. Love and appreciate you. Dr. Lara Hill here, signing off.